Welcome to coffeeis.me podcast, where me means you, or more precisely, us. This is the show where your host, Valerian, without using any interrogation techniques, convinces coffee professionals to reveal their secrets to teach and inspire you to make better coffee and earn a few bucks on the side, if that's what you fancy. Let the show begin.
Hello coffee friends, thank you for spending your time listening to coffeeis.me podcast. I'm your host Valerian Hrala. How was your week? I hope you had amazing coffee, and if you had a bad one, it was only for educational purposes. In my case, life is getting very busy, but busy is good. I still remember the times when I struggled to decide what to do with my day. It was when I was still trying to get a job with Peet's Coffee. Yeah, when I came to United States, that was my first job interview. It failed. I guess in the eyes of Peet's, I'm a failed coffee professional. That's okay. By the way, what's up with Peet's? First, they have this pimped, very cool looking food truck running around the Bay Area, and later, they buy Stumptown. Who is next? Blue Bottle? Maybe Verve? Rituals? Has Been? Luckily, there are no big coffee chains in Slovakia, so my company Green Plantation is safe. Also, this weekend I was filming with Willem Booth new modules for coffeecourses.com. We bought 6 well-known third-wave coffee brands, and Willem examined them, cupped them, assessed their roast style, and gave some ideas how would he improve the roast. Oh man, he did not shy away from pretty harsh comments. Whoa, I can't wait to put these videos on the internet. The good news, guys, is that these videos will be free as a part of our Coffee Courses launch. I'll definitely let you know when they will be available. I'm excited to announce that this and the next episode guest is Benjamin Meyers from Thousand Faces Coffee, and he has an amazing story to tell. He started Thousand Faces in the middle of the forest. These are his words, not mine. They launched in Athens, Georgia, with a Diedrich roaster, 1 container of coffee, yes, 1 container of coffee, that means 21 tons or 44,000 pounds, and an idea to convince coffee growers that sustainable coffee practices do pay off. Ben will talk about the initial investment they put into this project and how a slow-growing company can be an advantage when your goal is to learn in the process. We will talk about our experiences of getting our first wholesale customers, and Ben will give you a roadmap how to approach your first wholesale customer. In 2013, Thousand Faces won the Good Food Awards. For me, it was a great opportunity to ask if a coffee award like Good Food Awards make a difference in one's business. Is it the same as winning the AeroPress World Championship? And finally, we'll learn why brewing beer is not for me. A few weeks ago, I asked you on our Facebook community page, what would you ask someone who has a coffee roasting business? You guys came back with plenty of interesting questions, which I will use in a second part of this interview. If you want to ask a question, join our Facebook community. You can do so by going to coffees.me website, click community and apply. See you there. Do not forget to listen until the very end, because I will announce a special challenge for you and me. I would be very happy if you join me on this quest. I will also announce the winners of Bootcamp Barista membership, so stay tuned. Okay, enough of this, let's get to the interview. Hello Ben, welcome in coffeeis.me podcast. We met at the Good Food Awards, and when I asked you what you do, you gave me a big site and you told me something like you do a lot of things and it's kind of hard to explain. And I can totally relate to that because I do the same. I do have so many things, so many projects in the coffee industry, and just kind of hard to explain sometimes what we exactly do. But later when we talked, you told me that you do the Thousand Faces coffee company and also a nonprofit called Chain Collaborative. Tell me more about this Chain Collaborative. Let's start there. You said on your website that you are connecting the people in a coffee industry. So what does that exactly mean in general? And also what does it mean for a small coffee roaster, for example?
Right. So I joined the Chain Collaborative about 6 months ago and came on as the president of the board of directors. And it's an organization that has been spearheaded by Nora Berkeley. And I came across Nora kind of reading some of her writing in the coffee trade journals. She wrote some nice articles in Roast Magazine and Barista Magazine, and reached out to her and started to learn a little bit more about the organization. The Chain Collaborative's been around for about a year now, and Nora really dove right in there, and she lives down in Nicaragua right now, and she's been facilitating a lot of great relationships amongst various value chain members in the coffee industry. I think, as producers of coffee or coffee roasters are becoming to get to know each other a lot better each year. There's this emphasis on relationships, and people are becoming more interested in ways in which they can, give back to the farmers and do something a little bit more than just a fair price for coffee. And so what the Chain Collaborative strives to do is create, facilitate, and contribute to sustainable projects. And we try to, help out with program design and management so that coffee farmers and coffee roasting companies can really focus on what they do best, whether it be growing the coffee and processing the coffee or roasting it and distributing it. I think what we do is provide templates and models and guidance and structure for creating great developmental projects, and then bringing the people together, relying on our connections and our bandwidth for bringing the right parties together. So in terms of how it can be a good tool for a small roaster, obviously a lot of small roasters are very compassionate, caring individuals, and they want to make an impact at origin, yet they're really struggling to just make their own ends meet and deliver their product. So sometimes it makes sense to band together and work in solidarity with other roasters kind of a similar size, and band together on a project in which you can bring together multiple parties and create a larger impact. So what we do is we've created a small roaster consortium, kind of in order to empower roasters to head down this direction. And sometimes there are a lot of kind of specifics into the different projects. But when it comes to collaboration, sometimes you begin with an open canvas, and it's from there that you kind of create the details.
I want to move on to your company, the Thousand Faces Coffee, simply because most of our listeners are interested in the business aspect of the coffee roasting. But first, I want to ask you, what did motivate you to start Thousand Faces Coffee?
After I returned from the Peace Corps in Russia, I took a job as a social worker in the Bay Area, and I was helping severely emotionally disturbed kids kind of emancipate from the social services into being out of service. Once they turn 18, they're kind of out of the system. So, I was going around helping them kind of find jobs, and there was one distinct moment when I was taking a young man around and trying to help him find a job, and I just kind of felt like the odds were just really stacked against him, and I kind of made a decision in that moment that I wanted to kind of be on the other side of the counter and kind of affect change from the perspective of a small business owner. And so I was also teaching some systems ecology courses at Berkeley, and I kind of came to a place in my life where I wanted to move out of this kind of theoretical and psychological sphere into an area where I could actually touch the product I was working with, and coffee became that product for me. I had some friends who were doing their PhDs in ecology at the University of Georgia in Athens, and they were connected to a group of coffee growers in Ecuador. And pretty much at the right time, they reached out to me and said, we're looking for somebody to come down to Athens, Georgia, and help us start a roasting business. And I just, I had no experience in coffee whatsoever. And I jumped at it. I said, yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I made a kind of instinctual decision, and drove across the country down to Athens, Georgia, and we bought a small roaster and a container of coffee from this remote region of Ecuador, and started roasting out of a garage in the middle of the forest. So.
Did you have any previous? You said you did not have any previous roasting experience. So how did you learn roasting?
I learned roasting through doing it. I guess I just kind of threw myself into the fire. Obviously, I scoured the internet and the libraries for any resources I could find, and took notes. There wasn't as much literature back then. This was 10 years ago as there is now, but I was able to find some great resources. Obviously, reading Kenneth David's work was influential on me. And I went out to the we bought a Dietrich and went out to the Dietrich headquarters and did a weekend training with Steve Dietrich. Mm-hmm. But that was more so I didn't actually burn down the house that I was working at than just learning the basic functions of the machine. And it was quite nice that I only had 2 coffees to work with to start. I had one from the Pichincha region in the north, and then one from the Loja region in the south. And like I said, I had a whole container of those and no wholesale accounts or no retail business to work with. So I pretty much spent the first 2 years roasting that container of coffee, those same 2 coffees. And I think I taught myself how little things made a big difference, whether it be the charge temperature or how I adjusted the airflow during the roast. I took my time learning. I just was in that garage pretty much roasting by myself. I didn't have any employees for the first 2 years, and just taught myself how to roast. Whenever I had a chance to engage with another roaster, I took full advantage of it. I reached out to other roasters via phone or email and tried to talk to them about this or that. And I think that's kind of where I started to really get into this idea of collaboration and sharing knowledge. It was so important to me back then when people would make the time to chat about this. And so I've always been very intentional now with making the time to chat with people and share what knowledge or approach I can help them out with.
Yeah, that's why I invited you to the podcast, because you will not believe not too many people like to share. I love to share, but
yeah.
So I'm very thankful. But you said something which I think scared most and will scare most of beginner roasters or somebody who's starting the business. You bought a container of coffee. That's 21 tons, right?
Right.
That's like diving into that very deeply, because most of us buy, like maybe a pallet, which is 650 kilos, right? Like 10 bags or 11 bags, whatever. And it's just like you really dove into it. So you got your Dietrich and you bought a container of coffee. Wow. Well, big kudos for you, man.
Yeah, we were, like I said, we were ecologists and we were academics, and we were very idealistic. The purchase of this coffee was intentional. It was, we were trying to create a market for this particular coffee. Mm-hmm. We were trying to increase the value so that rainforest preservation work could be kind of empowered by teaching these coffee growers that they could get a higher yield if they grew the coffee in a way that was sustainable for the environment to flourish. I wouldn't recommend that as a way to start your business. I'm actually have become somewhat jaded towards kind of any small business having an exterior mission be maybe one of the dominant characteristics of the business mission. I think that a new business should be focused on doing what it does best and not trying to take care of another business. I think if I were to start again, I would probably get a much smaller roaster and a much smaller batch of coffee.
Do you remember what was your initial investment in the first business? Well, I know the content of coffee was probably expensive, but how about the tech?
I personally put in about $20,000 into the business to start. I think all told, we had about 40 to 60,000, if I can remember correctly. It was a very, very underfunded operation. I would say if you were going to start up a coffee roaster today, you should come to the table with 150 to 200,000 to get a good start.
Oh, wow. But, there's a lot of guys who cannot afford 150, 200,000.
Oh, yeah.
And possibly they want to start their own small shops. We, in Green Plantation, my Slovak venture, we started with 8,000 euros, which at that time was like maybe $10,000. And yes, I agree, it's underfunded. And in Slovakia, it's different simply because the rent, the salaries are much, 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 much lower than, the lifestyle is much cheaper there than here. So it was not that hard to start. It's interesting. So in that 60,000, you had also that container of coffee, right? That was...
Right.
Yeah, okay. How did your first few months look like? How did the profit came in? I mean, was it a steep curve? Was it something challenging?
I like to tell people that we were a slow growth business. And I think there's a difference between a business that's a fast growth business and a slow growth business. And I think sometimes you can have slow, which is unintentional, and slow, which is intentional. We didn't need to make a profit right off the get-go, and we didn't have overhead costs that were cumbersome. I worked another job in the evening, and basically what we were doing was just kind of building a skill set, building a knowledge, building slowly so that we kind of understood it right from the get-go. So there were really no profits in the beginning. There were no profits for the first 3 to 5 years of the company.
Wow. Okay.
We were just kind of, slowly building something.
It's good to realize that
right.
You said 3 to 5 years. Wow. So if somebody's starting a business, they have to realize that you have to build, especially if you're going with a low capital in, right?
So yeah, so that's, and then the antithesis, or the other side, not the antithesis, would be a fast growth business. You have high overhead, you've got, high salaries, maybe you're opening up in the middle of Brooklyn, New York. You don't have 3 to 5 years to grow. You don't have time to learn on the job. I opened up in the middle of the forest in Athens, Georgia. Mm-hmm. It was intentional. I didn't know what I was doing. Now I wouldn't do that. I think you really have to realize kind of what's your position in the marketplace. Are you bringing a lot of skills and know-how to the table, or do you want to take some time and develop your own approach or your own way of doing things? And I think that was what we did at Thousand Faces, is we developed our own unique approach. We weren't in a market that was heavily inundated with other coffee professionals, so kind of made it up as we went along and created our own way of doing things, which for me is important.
So there was no big need to kind of differentiate yourself, or did you have some competition? You had to be somehow different. We did have some competition. They were mostly doing kind of darker roasts and blends, and we were focusing right from the get-go on the geography of origin and lighter roasts. That's how we did it. We came in with light roast and third wave, whatever we call it. These very specified lot. Right. Nobody else was doing it, and it was very easy to differentiate yourself at that time. My Slovak venture restarted in 2012. So actually we were a laughing stock for many people, and we like that because, it's now they do it the same, by the way.
Right.
But at that time it was very easy to differentiate yourself, yeah. I get one question very often, and I like to ask it from people like you who started a business. How do you get your first wholesale customer? How did you get your first?
Our first wholesale customer, that was a friend. It was a friend who is in the opening that ran a farm to table restaurant. It was called Farm 255. It's no longer open, but it was a huge success in the fact that it inspired a lot of great food people.
Mm-hmm.
But that was just, through a relationship.
How did you approach them?
Oh, I've known them for years. It was just, it was something that we were all doing. It was something, the way in which we sourced this coffee was the way in which everything was sourced at the restaurant. There was no question as to whether they would use it or not. I've done sales, and I'm happy to talk about, how to approach wholesale accounts, but this was a unique kind of family type of relationship.
So go ahead, tell us how to approach a wholesale account. We want to know.
With compassion, you need to approach a wholesale account. What I mean by that is you need to have an understanding of where the wholesale account is at, what's their position, what's their needs. And so you have to verse yourself a little bit into the food and beverage industry, and you have to understand where people are at. Obviously, the best wholesale account is one that hasn't yet opened, that are still deciding what sort of equipment they're going to buy and what sort of presentation they're going to put forward. And so those are the accounts that you can help from the beginning and design their coffee platform with them. Getting somebody going in with a cold call and getting somebody to switch from, coffee A to your coffee. That's a very challenging thing to do. And I think it speaks to how they run their business, that they might kind of jump ship from the previous vendor to you. I've always thought the best sales approach was like a spider. You want to create a beautiful web. I hate to refer to wholesale accounts as insects, but you would, they would get caught in your web. And so I guess by web, I mean culture, product, brand, just the entirety of your business. You want the wholesale accounts to come to you. That's the best sales approach there is. It's a lot harder to going to them and knocking on the doors and putting your best foot forward that way.
Yeah, I kind of agree on that. All our wholesale accounts are usually new innovative restaurants, new innovative cafes. I would honestly never go to an existing cafe and convince them to change, simply because, as you said, first of all, if they would change, it also gives you an idea that, they don't take partnerships very seriously. The second of all, it feels for me, and again, it's my opinion, that I'm kind of pushy and I'm kind of trying to take somebody out, which is not us. We don't like to kind of associate with that kind of business. Yeah, I mean, you're right that I just realized that most of our companies are new places. For us, it was also important to pitch a partnership, not only the coffee itself, but
right.
As you said, that you went to the places and you troubleshooted coffee with them, you talked to them, you basically played together with coffee. We like to do that. We enjoy that. And if the passion is there, I think that restaurant or the wholesale account will notice that, and they want you rather than anyone else, right?
Right.
You already mentioned some mistakes you did in your company. You already said that you would not buy a container again, etc. So tell us what biggest mistakes you did, and that other roasters can avoid them.
Well, I think making mistakes is a good thing. So I wouldn't want to say don't make mistakes. I think you should fail, and failing's a great tool for learning. Lessons you can learn from my failures, which I do like sharing. Yeah, I don't see there's any need for people to make them again. I would warn against kind of aligning yourself with a mission, to start. I think it can be very noble and your heart's in the right place, but the business has its own heart, and it's going to need for you to do what's best for that. So just kind of be aware of that. You might approach the market gingerly and with a sense of kind of grace. I think I was, a little bit of, I was 26 when I started my business, and I had a big chip on my shoulder. I think I probably still do, but I probably said some things that were a little bit too bombastic and probably rubbed some people the wrong way just in order to get attention. And maybe I would have cut back on that a little bit. But, when you're young and you're hungry and you you don't have any wholesale accounts, you don't have any business, you're just, you're maybe a little bit more emotional. And maybe in that mind frame, maybe you can kind of, with your initial plans, create a little bit more of a realistic budget. Most entrepreneurs create budgets which aren't realistic. Mm-hmm. I think it's great to hope for the best, but you should really kind of be planning for the worst. And so give yourself, space and time to grow slowly if you can. I mean, it depends on, like I said, if you're opening up in Chicago or you're opening up in San Francisco, you're playing with different gods, and you're going to need to make profit a lot faster, or at least the business is going to need to grow faster.
I liked your description when you said that you set certain very strong things. I think everybody does that. And
Right.
I think the reason is because maybe in the beginning we are maybe too passionate. We think
Right.
that we discovered the world and anything else is bad. And that mindset is okay, but maybe you don't have to be vocal about that. It's
Right.
okay to really believe what you do, right? But you cannot offend other people. Yeah, I agree. I was the same, by the way. So I have to admit it.
Yeah.
I was the same. I was
Yeah, you
shouting
come out of
everywhere.
the gate. It's challenging because, in a certain sense, you need to have that kind of, large confidence. But you need to have that large confidence, and you need to learn to use it well.
What are your best tips for starting a coffee business in order to succeed?
The best tips that I can give are to develop a good approach to the daily practice, because coffee takes time and it takes discipline in order to reach the level that you're desiring to reach, which is being successful and having people really enjoy your coffee. It takes work and it takes time, and it takes standards, it takes protocols. Invest yourself in the process. I guess that would be my biggest tip. I think that can be roasting, it can be cupping, it can be ways in which you communicate with others. Having your kind of standards clear is a great way to head on the pathway towards success.
So if tomorrow a friend of yours comes to you and says, "Hey Ben, I want to start a coffee roasting company," what internet book or movie resources would you recommend? What would be your list?
I like the documentary that came out of Japan about the sushi restaurant. I'm forgetting the name right now.
I think I saw it. I forgot the name too. Is it the guy who takes his sushi?
He dreams of sushi. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was a great one. I tend to like things from other industries and kind of trying to bring them into my process. I really like, Dan Barber's book on the third plate is a really fantastic book. Paul Hawkins' book on growing a business was a very influential book. Small is Beautiful is a great book by E.F. Schumacher. I'm a type that's constantly kind of digging around and researching different materials to find inspiration from, and I think that would be my recommendation, is just kind of keep digging, keep searching, keep working until you find what you like and find where your inspiration is, and then go with that.
Cool. Thanks. I like that. I like that. Everybody has their own kind of language they like to
Right.
communicate in, right? So possibly, as you said, some people would prefer some other. But thanks for the tips, because obviously, we want to know your opinion. So
Yeah.
thanks for the list. I want to talk a little bit about the coffee roaster, because I cannot skip this topic. You said that you started with Diedrich.
Right.
What size was that?
An IR12.
Okay, IR12. Are you still roasting on Diedrich?
Yeah.
Oh, the same stuff.
Yeah.
Cool. How are you happy with it?
Yeah, we've been very happy with it. It's a great roaster. We're planning on getting I think it's an IR20 is the next one we're looking at getting. We need to upgrade to a larger machine and keep this one rolling as well. Yeah, it's a fantastic machine. Yeah.
Do you use a sample roaster?
Yeah, we had a INSA for a long time, which was made down in Peru. We actually recently sold that to one of our coffee growers that we work with in Nicaragua to give them a tool to have, and we kind of went back to using a B-more at the shop.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which we find just to be a really easy tool for consistency. It's not a drum roaster, but it's gonna do the same thing every time, and it's not gonna need a big warm up time, or it's not gonna be affected by environmental conditions, or it's not gonna be affected by kind of the roaster's skill set where that employee's at. Sometimes we have new employees, sometimes we have old employees. For somebody who's like using it every day and sample roasting every day, and we just weren't doing that. We were sample roasting kind of once a week type of thing.
Okay.
Once, twice a week. Sometimes we'd have a bunch of samples that we worked through in a day.
I started with B-more when I moved to the United States 5 years ago. But my problem was that when I got, let's say, samples from some European importer, let's say 12 samples, to roast it on a B-more was like, for me, a pain, especially if you had to do it many times. But yeah, I loved my B-more. So that's why I said, oh yeah, B-more.
And the sample roasters are quite expensive. So it's a very, B-more is about $500 if I remember correctly off the top of my head, which is, when you start looking into sample roasters, sometimes you can start approaching like the $5,000 to $10,000 range.
Oh yeah. I think that this is one of the biggest, that's why I asked, by the way, and I'm going to ask almost everyone, because this is a big issue for companies, like especially small companies, that they want to test their coffee, they want to ask for samples and roast them and cup them, but they have, let's say, a production machine and they don't have a sample roaster. So it's kind of nice to hear that you use B-more. I personally, we started to use Hooky 500 simply because it's gas and it's more related to our roasters, what we use. But it's also like $1,500. And when I remember I did a video about Hooky, a small review, and I said a very affordable roaster. People started to write comments. Are you crazy? $1,500 is not affordable. I'm like, well, in a professional world, actually that's extremely cheap because the next one will be around $4,000 or $5,000.
Yeah.
So it's actually very, very cheap.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of nice to hear that what other people use, because that's a biggie. We want to test our samples and we cannot roast them on our production machines. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, I have a Quest roaster here at my house that I just got, but I haven't fired it up yet. So looking forward to playing around on that.
That's a fancy one.
Yeah, it's good. As long as you have a really good awareness as to the qualities that your machine puts forward, then you can make good assessment on green kind of based on those on that knowledge. Knowing what your roaster is going to do to the coffee, understanding how these green qualities are different from roast to roast.
I checked out your website. I saw you have very interesting portfolio. What's your main kind of like philosophy when you are deciding about your portfolio, coffee portfolio?
It's changed over time. And right now it's really that we have 5 to 6 strong relationships with these producers. Our coffees don't switch too much from year to year. We're trying to keep them the same for the next 5 years and really invest into these relationships, invest into these producers. It wasn't, for the first 8 years of the business, I was pulling coffees from all over the place and educating my palate and having a lot of fun and mixing it up a bunch. I think what I found over time is that from the consumer perspective, this is overwhelming to be introducing all these coffees. Coffee has Indonesian language, it has Ethiopian, Central American, South American, names, Brazilian names. It's already challenging enough for the consumer to digest what you're putting forward. So I tried to really kind of keep the coffees the same now and invest in certain relationships. It helps me say to other kind of coffee projects, no, I'm visiting this coffee farm this year. My dad lived in Ethiopia for a number of years in the 60s, and I've spent good time there. And for me, it's the Mecca of coffee. It's the Garden of Eden. I think
For
that,
many of us.
yeah, for a lot of us. I mean, it's the Holy Land. So I want as much Ethiopian coffees as we can do in a good way. And I think we have 4 kind of producing partnerships over there that we work closely with.
Do you buy through importers or do you buy direct trade?
We work with importers on all of our coffees, and I also kind of consider that to be we also participate in kind of direct trade as well. By that I mean that we pair the roaster and the farmer. We invest in the relationship there. And then we invest in the professional services of people who are able to manage risk appropriately, like an importer, exporter. And for the first couple years, I did the importing, exporting of the coffee, and I was just really bad at it. I learned, and it wasn't where I needed to invest my skills. I needed to invest my time and energy in growing 1,000 Faces and not managing, importing, exporting of coffee. I do think it's super important to go and visit the producers and develop a relationship with them and sit down and break bread and understand what their goals are and communicate to them what your goals are and realize that you're in a partnership and there is an aspect of direct trade that's happening there. The direct trade is kind of the sharing of the information, the sharing of the story. You're going to need to bring together a lot of different hands in order to kind of move that coffee from Ethiopia to Athens, Georgia.
I totally agree with you on this. I mean,
Right.
I always say to people that you are, managing a roasting company, not an importing company. And I like to work with importers. One thing which I will mention, though, is when you mentioned your portfolio that you are settled, that basically those are the coffees you like to create relations and sell. Well, we try to do the same, but we realized that our customers wanted to always try something new. So
Yeah.
I got annoyed in December last year. I said, okay, we give them something new. We're going to buy smaller quantities of very different coffees. Because my theory was also that it's easier to master 6 roast profiles than master 20 roast profiles.
Yeah.
But we kind of a little bit cheated on that. So we decided that, okay, not every coffee will have its own roast profile, but we go, let's say, hard beans wash will have one, and soft beans wash will have a second one. So maybe we have 4 roast profiles, 5, which we alternate depending on the coffee, but we have now a much bigger portfolio and people gobbled it up. People love that. So
Right.
I'm just putting it out there so people kind of try this out, what works for them, what are their customers like, what they like, because in our case, we learned that actually they like a lot of coffees, which is not very good for us, obviously, because we like to
Right.
play with each individual a lot. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that how one thing works somewhere else doesn't work somewhere else. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And like I said, this is totally, our approach. And there's a lot of great approaches that you can take in the coffee industry. And I really encourage everyone to learn from other people's approaches, but really find your own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going to make you really special and have consumers connect with you is not, copying another person's approach. For me, like I said, this is it continues to be kind of an ecological project, and bringing out flavors is something that I see as kind of ecological work.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing out the producer's identity is ecological work, and it's just it's kind of a life mission that I've kind of taken on. And so that that's why we're focusing on 5 or 6 coffees, is to really just build relationships with
Mm-hmm.
with the producers.
It makes total sense. I love it, by the way.
Yeah.
I wish I could do the same. And maybe we'll do it. We need to grow. We started restarted because before that we were doing like commercial grade, something like Starbucks dark roast, but it was
Right.
really boring. So I actually wanted to stop it. And in 2012, 2010, I discovered the specialty world and the light roast. I was like, this is fascinating. I want to do this. So, but still, we have
Yeah.
some time to grow into that. But I love what you do, man. It's great.
Yeah, and we cheat too. It's like we have our standards, but we also, occasionally I'll find a coffee and we'll just, buy 10 to 20 bags of that coffee because it just blew our mind and
Hmm.
it's available and we love everything we hear about it and it's a great project that we're kind of collaborating on as well. So, but it makes it's made a lot easier for me too, just the clarity.
Yeah. So you have, I was wondering about one thing all the time, how awards, like any kind of award, like Barista Champion Award or AeroPress Award or any kind of award can influence your business. In your case, you actually won with your coffee the Good Food Award. It was the Ethiopia Sukekuto.
Right.
And I was wondering, how did it change the perspective on your company and how did it change your business financially?
The Good Food Award has made a very substantial impact on our business. From a personal perspective, it's just a very validating experience to have a third party, give you this award and acknowledge, this quality that's beyond the brand. It's just pure in the cup. It'd be judged by a group of peers who you really respect, and to be put on the national stage like that is very validating personally. Speaking directly to the company, our largest account came to us through the Good Food Awards. So they literally went on the Good Food Awards and found a roaster that was closest to them, and they reached out to us. And it's District Donut Sliders and Brew down in New Orleans, and they're just a fantastic partner for us to work with. Now they have 3 outlets, and they're wonderful people to work with. So financially, it's brought in a lot of sales. I'm a big advocate for getting out there and putting yourself on the stage. At the least, it's a great chance to learn. It's a great chance to engage. It's a great chance to get feedback and participate, and you're going to find value. Even if you don't win, you're going to come home with value.
Good to know.
Yep.
Let's do that, all of us, right now. No, I'm asking because our barista won the AeroPress World Championship, which is a different
Right.
beast, obviously.
Right.
But for us, there was no financial reward whatsoever. But as you said, that feeling that you are one of the best ones, it just gives you validation what you do. It gives you kind of like, we are doing something right here. We are motivating baristas to do a great job. So yeah, morally for us, it was much more than financially. But again, it's a different beast. So if you win with coffee, it's good to know that it actually brings you some business.
Yeah, and we've had employees who have gone deep into the competitions, into the U.S. Brewers Cup and the Barista, and it's just a lot of fun, and it builds camaraderie, and it's a lot of excitement, and it builds your team too. It gives you something to rally around, and it's fun.
Cool. If you wouldn't have your company right now, but you were the same kind of nerdy about coffee what you are, and you would have $10,000, what kind of coffee business would you start, and how do you see that coffee business in 5 years from now?
I would get myself a small roaster, like some that does under a pound, and I would get myself a website and start doing mail order coffees and see if I could build a brand amongst my friends and my community and maybe the kind of larger United States, and just start roasting coffee out of your house and try to build a brand on the website. And then if you have something good that's been started, something that people are responding to, something that people feel connected with, then you have some material for investing some more. And you're probably not going to have money from that little venture in order to kind of invest more. You're probably just going to be operating at a loss. But if I was going to start with $10,000, that's probably what I would do. Just roast specialty, get really nice coffees to roast in small quantities and send them to people who want to order it online.
Well, I think that's a good way how to test the market.
But yeah, I think roasting at home is a great way to start. Start off small and see if you really like doing it. See if you really love it over a period of time. Maybe it's just a little passing dream that you're not really into. I remember I thought I'm going to open up a chocolate roasting business too, and put it right next door to my coffee roasting business. And the first time I roasted chocolate on the Bmore, and then I went to go taste chocolate, and I realized I can't do this. I can't taste chocolate all the time on that first tasting, and I never wanted to go further with it. Even though I like chocolate from time to time and I love the process around it, for me, biologically, it doesn't work out to be consuming chocolate like that. So
I agree. It's the same story with me and a beer. I started to brew beer, and I realized two things. One, that when I roasted my first coffee, it was much better than anything out there in a store, which is not true with beer. So when I made my first beer, I knew there's many better breweries than my beer. They have better beer than my beer. And second, the time. When you roast your coffee, you basically roast it, and next day you cup it, and you know the result. With beer, you brew it. In a month, you can have your first sip, and that's never that best one. And then after 3 months, another 3 months, you can have a solid beer or not. Because, there's little dirt or bacteria gets in and the whole batch is spoiled. So I was like, this is not for me. I don't want to do this. So respect brewers, a lot of respect.
Right. So you get a little feedback with your investment, and you're not in too deep. It's not like you put $100,000 in, and then you've got no choice but to love it at that point.
Yeah, I like it. So there you go, guys. You can try this if you don't have any idea of your own, but I'm sure that you do. Anyhow, so thank you so much for the first part of the interview. And for the second part of the interview, I prepared something very special. I have a Facebook group called coffeeis.me, where there is already over 150 people. And I asked them that what would they ask if they had a question for a coffee roaster or a guy who owns a coffee roasting business. And they came up with a list. So I'll shoot you with those questions and you will answer them, I hope.
Yep.
Thank you for listening to the first episode with Benjamin Meyers from Thousand Faces Coffee. I hope you got plenty of useful tips from Ben. He's already in our coffees.me Facebook group, so feel free to ask him questions in the comments below this episode. Thank you for all your support and reviews, they keep me going. As always, I'm still collecting iTunes reviews, and this time I set a challenge for myself, and I need your help. 50 iTunes reviews by end of this year. What do you think? Can we do it? What is in it for you? If coffees.me gets 50 iTunes reviews by December 31st, 2015, one of you will be rewarded with 6-month membership to coffeecourses.com. That is worth $600. Let me add also another motivator, 3 coffees from my European coffee business, Green Plantation Coffee. Here the value is priceless. And 1 mystery coffee. This mystery coffee will be the coffee for my new coffee venture in the United States I might start next year. Or not. But most likely yes. Perhaps. In any case, you will get the coffee. As for myself, if this podcast gets 50 iTunes reviews by end of this year, I'll get myself an espresso gear. I stopped doing espresso 4 years ago, and I think it's time to get back on track. But I have to justify it for myself and for my wife. I guess 50 reviews on iTunes will convince her that I need it. Okay, I'm bad here. I have a very sweet, understanding, and cappuccino-loving wife, so really I have to justify it only for myself. So this one is partly on you. If you feel that I should reward myself in espresso gear for doing this podcast, or you want the big win, help me to get those 50 reviews on iTunes by end of this year. Today we have around 14, so we have a way to go. Speaking of those reviews, last week we did not have any winner, so let's be generous this week. This week's winners are Reason Grind LB, Yababai Victory, and Zorpi77. Drop me an email to valerian@coffeeis.me and I will set you up with Bootcamp Barista account. Thank you for listening. Talk to you soon. Bye.